Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it anywhere and everywhere. You can even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works.
Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today.
Then you can go ahead and distribute your podcast to Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are heard.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take the conversation with your fans to the next level, Q&A polls are the best way to get them talking.
With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions.
And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We've been using Spotify for Podcasters, and we highly recommend you give it a try. Download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters and get started.
What up? That's us. That's So Fringy. We're back.
For real.
The link is going to be in the show notes for you to follow.
Wait. We didn't even do the intro. Hi, welcome to the
That
podcast.
was our intro.
No.
Yes, it was.
That was not enough.
That's a great intro.
Let's restart.
Welcome to That So Fringy podcast.
Okay, here we go. Can I still stand like this?
Yes. You
Okay.
Bodyguard stand like that.
Welcome back to That So Fringy podcast. What are you laughing at?
Why are you standing like that? This is Rick. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Bethany.
And welcome back to That So Fringy podcast.
Stop it. Why are you doing that with your
We're
face?
Here.
The
Lord,
microphone.
I'm actually tall.
Just
He's
stand
not
up.
gonna be able
Just
to-
stand up like normal, but scoot to the side a little
We're
bit.
very-
Welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. I'm Kristen,
I'm Rick.
And I'm Bethany.
and we are here today with Brady, who was a Freemason. So he gets in detail
Yeah.
some of the oaths, some of the stuff that they go through. It's very, very, very interesting. So you're going to want to stay tuned.
Mhm.
But Rick, tell them about the Telegram.
Oh yeah, Telegram. We have a new Fringy chat. It's called the Fringy Chat, so shouldn't be hard to find. But there is a link in the show notes that you could go down and check out. Just click it; it'll take you right there. Join. It's open to the public. Anybody can join, which means sometimes there might be some spam in there. Just mark it as spam. We'll try to get these people out as fast as we can. But this is the opportunity for us to get together as a fringy people, a fringy gathering, for everybody to share information and talk and ask questions and get more information. And we might even, do some lives on there, where everybody can tune in and listen to us chatter and actually ask questions, right there.
We have the Q&A thing on Spotify, which is awesome. But just so that you guys understand on the backside of it, if you ask us a question on there, we don't have a way to really respond to it.
Mhm.
So we've had a lot of really good questions, but we don't have a good way of answering those. So this, either send us a message on Instagram or, on the Telegram channel, just something like that where we can actually interact. And if it's a question that somebody else in this community can answer, then everybody will be on there.
And that frees us up to live our lives. It frees you up to live your lives. It gives everybody an outlet to talk about this
And
stuff.
a different perspective. We've all had a different walk in our life. So we all have a different perspective on some of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you find that you're not really alone in the world, we're all in this together. We're all under God's creation, doing the things that he wants us to do. And it's hard because there's not a lot of people out there doing it. And so what happens when you come together like this is you find there are a lot more people out there doing it than we think that there are. And because of communities like this that we can build, each and every one of us, we can find that there are people just like us out there that are having the same issues, the same problems. and they've been through the same stuff, and they can be a sounding board for you. You guys can talk back and forth. It's awesome. So anyway, we wanted to give that opportunity. It was prompted by us wanting to answer a question that we couldn't answer. Once we get on the chat, we'll answer that question for you, and I'll make it very clear what the question is and what the answer is. So we'll see you over there on Telegram. With that, you guys have anything else?
I don't think so. Just
Stay tuned.
Yeah, keep liking and subscribing and sharing and following and sending our podcast to people. Just, you guys have grown this podcast for us like we couldn't even imagine. Yeah. So we thank you.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. We're having a good time. So let's keep the train rolling. Woo-hoo. With that, we're That's So Fringy podcast. Stay tuned for Brady. He's going to be talking about that behind the scenes
look behind the curtain of the Freemasons.
Yeah, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. We are here with our friend Brady. Brady, we love having guests on that are about Jesus, that are about this movement of waking people up. And we heard you on Silver Pilled. Shout out to those guys over there, good buddies of ours. And or should I say the Paramorons? I think it's the Paramorons is actually. Anyway, we love you guys over there. And so we just wanted to connect with Brady and have him tell his story. And maybe we can reach that story out to more people by having him on multiple sites and multiple places. So that's our desire for today. So Brady, how are you, man? Good?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. So glad to have somebody that's willing to just talk about these weird things with us, because we're those fringy folks that everybody's usually running away from.
I know how that is. My entire life has been paranormal since the moment I was born. So it's actually probably from before that, actually. So
wow, everything. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, I just right from birth, coming out with a broken 180 foot. Like my foot was 180 right from birth. So my first 8 months of my life, I was in a cast.
Wow.
Yeah, and then just a lot of paranormal experiences growing up, between seeing ghosts and hearing things in my grandmother's house.
Let me stop you for just a second. I have a curiosity question, and I hope that's okay.
Sure.
When you were a baby and you had that trauma, you had that cast on, do you remember any of that?
No. I've only been told certain stories of it. So
I was just curious with like the stuff that they've done on trauma and how people remember trauma more than their everyday lives, because it's kind of cements it. It was just curious.
My earliest memory, I was 4. My earliest memory, so I don't remember really anything from before that, which is kind of weird because with the broken foot from birth, and then when I was 3, I got skin cancer, so I had to deal with that, but I don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
It's just, my medical records and things like that. And just my stories my mom's told me over the years and stuff like that. So, and then growing up, mostly as a kid and teenager, seeing ghosts and stuff like that, hearing weird footsteps in my grandmother's house. My grandmother was in a wheelchair, so there's, legs, can't walk. So hearing something bipedal walk down the hall past the bedroom when I'd be spending the weekend there, it used to trip me out. And then as I got older, things just got weirder. I guess you could say I got into the whole. So I wasn't born Catholic. I do remember going to Sunday school as like a 4 or 5 year old child, like once or twice.
Okay.
When my mom remarried, when I was 8, we moved to a new neighborhood, and there's 2 schools. There was a really dungy public school, and then there was a really nice Catholic school. So we had the option. My parents gave my sisters and I, because I have 3 older sisters that I grew up with, gave us the option of which school we wanted to go to. And so we chose the Catholic school because it's the nicer of the 2. So then in order to go to the Catholic school, you have to be baptized and go for your first communion and all that. So we started doing that and started going to church. But by the time I hit 13 years old, I was just not having it anymore. Like to me, this was just all a sham. Because I saw a lot of the people at my church that, they preach living as a Christian, but they don't live as a Christian. They're some of the
Right.
most, just heinous people. So I'm like, you're good one day of the week, and then, you think that's going to make up for all the other crap that you do through the week. It doesn't work like that, right?
Right.
And so I kind of really started to grow this disdain for, especially the Catholic Church. And then through high school, I met some people and kind of got into like the New Age Wicca and witchcraft, and had a nice Gothic spell when I was in high school as well. So
you went hard in the paint.
It went the complete other side. I wouldn't say that I
really
was,
hated that school.
I did, and then I went to a Catholic. High school as well, because by that point I had all my friends. So I was like, there was a high school a couple blocks away from my house, but I chose to go to the Catholic school, which was even further. I had to take a bus to it and everything, just because all my friends were going to it. But by the end of first semester, grade 9, I wasn't hanging out with any of them anymore. I had new friends, so I was like, this is, I should have gone to the public school, but. So I kind of went to the far end of that. And then as I got out of high school, it was still, pretty new agey for me. And then you get into the whole crystals and, doing seances, and, spell casting, and tarot cards and runes. And really, I've always kind of liked just reading on like the lowercase g gods. I've always had that fascination. It's always something, and I've been a conspiracy theorist kind of guy. Like I'm surprised I don't have a permanent tinfoil hat on, because I've been like that since I can remember. Right, I've never trusted the government, and I always was one of those guys that, like, I'm going to question everything. That's my parents hated that, but that's just how I was. Mind of my own kind of thing, God given mind of my own. So I got out of high school, and started doing that. And then I'd always been like, I'm a knuckle dragger. I'm 36 years old. I'm a knuckle dragger. I'm a CNC machinist. I work a night shift, actually. So my hours are from 2 p.m. to 2:30, 3 a.m. And then I drive home, right? So I get home at like 3:15 in the morning every day. So it's kind of an interesting time to get home at. Right. And I'm just a knuckle dragger. But there was a stint years back where I was self-employed in personal finance, mostly doing investments and some insurance as well. And so I was getting to a point that I didn't want to just keep hounding the ground all the time for business. Being self-employed, this is what you got to do, right? So I was growing tired of that. So I was trying to come up with ideas to like network myself. And one of the best things that I came up with was, hey, why don't I just join the Freemasons? So I was like, hey, this sounds like a great idea, because you always hear the conspiracy theories, and
but who believes any of that,
right? So it's I always liken them to that Simpsons episode. I was saying that on the Solar Pill podcast. Shout out to those boys. But the Stonecutters episode on the Simpsons, and how real. I mean, it's a parody, obviously, but there's a lot of truth in some of the things that they talk about in that episode. And so like so I got into the Freemasons, and it was weird because there was I was going through a real tough time in my life personally at that time as well. And after I got in, things really, like the paranormal, supernatural stuff, really picked up after that point. And because and I'm going to say this, like it's I speak for myself and my experiences, but from my experience and what I've seen through it, most of the guys that are getting into Freemasonry don't even understand what they're getting into. They don't understand the oaths that they're taking, because it kind of becomes like going to church every week, and it's the same. When you go to those churches that are just very mundane, it's the same thing every couple of weeks. They just regurgitate it. It's the same idea with Freemasonry. So a lot of these guys that get into it for the brotherhood, the fraternity, the boys' night out, having a beer. Like a lot of them, the guys that have been in a while, they're in their 60s and 70s, so want to get out of the house away from the wife for a night, kind of thing. And so that's what a lot of them do. So they just go through the motions of these rituals, not realizing the power and potential behind what you're actually doing. and then the potential repercussions of it. I mean, the church, the Roman Catholic Church especially, has denounced Freemasonry. If you're a Catholic and you become a Freemason, you're technically like automatically excommunicated from the church. Like you shouldn't even be allowed into a Roman Catholic Church or building or anything like that. You're automatically, just blackballed. And there was actually a thing that I was looking at for that that I actually had written down today. So, you get excommunicated by the church. And so, are you guys familiar with the Knights of Columbus?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Knights of Columbus was actually formed in March of 1882 in, where was it? I think New Haven, Connecticut. And so it was formed by the Roman Catholic Church in response to Freemasonry. So it was a God-directed fraternity organization that the church actually ordained. So it's kind of an alternative to Freemasonry. So there was always a running thing, because there's another one too called, oh my God, what were they called? Like the Order of Goodfellows or something like that. And
those are all kind of shut down now. You see them everywhere, and if you don't know the logo, you don't really know what you're looking for.
Exactly.
But if you guys look up the Order of the Goodfellows, you'll see their little logo, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen that everywhere. And then you will see it everywhere. But if you pay attention, they're all shut down. Like they're all shutting down, which is interesting to me.
I actually haven't seen one in quite some time. Probably at least 5 years now. So.
Yeah.
But I actually knew a guy, worked with a guy that was a member of that, which, we were kind of rivals in a sense, because them and Masonry, Knights of Columbus, are all rivals, right? They don't like each other generally. So, but so for a lot of people that don't know, so Freemasonry was actually formed so they quote the Old Testament. So the story of Hiram Abiff, who was the master builder of King Solomon's temple, right? He was what they call the Master Mason. And so in Freemasonry, there's 3 degrees that you can get. They tell you there's no degree higher than the 3rd degree. Most people, when they think of Freemasonry, they think of the 32nd or 33rd degree, which are sectors of an off-branch of Freemasonry called the Scottish Rite. And then there's also another off-branch called the York Rite, and then there's also the off-branch called the Shriners. And so there's a lot of weird things. So like the first official Freemason lodge was in England in 1717, was when first a lodge was formed by a bunch of different lodges that came together and just basically formed their original Grand Lodge. And so you'll see the acronym AFAM a lot of the times when it comes to Freemasonry. And what that actually stands for is Accepted Free Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons. And so basically, back in the day, it was Masons were like Freemasonry was just the trade. It was like the masonry trade, right? Stone laying and stuff like that.
Almost like a union.
Kind of, yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. And so that was what they used to meet up in different lodges and trade, trade secrets with each other, how to get things perfect. And that's why a lot of the old architecture, from ancient times is just, it's pristine, because they had this secret knowledge when it came to building. And so that's how it all started way back in biblical times. And then it just proceeded on through, the centuries. But then it got to a point that more people wanted to get into it, and it became that boys club. But so these guys that weren't stonemasons wanted to join the brotherhood. So that's where the ancient, free, and accepted masons comes from. So it's actually it alludes to just people who aren't stonemasons. So if you ever see the AFAM, that's what that actually means. Okay. And then so here's a lot of people have the misconception that they meet up, once or twice a month or whatever it is at the lodges, and they plot to take over the world or do these nefarious things. And unfortunately, as boring as it is, that's completely false.
Yeah.
And me as my conspiracy theorist person, I can, accurately say that it's false. It's not what happens at lodge meetings. The nefarious stuff happens outside of the lodge, right?
Mm.
So the lodge meetings are just those times when they go to bring guys up through the ranks to deal with lodge business, whether it be voting on a candidate, because you have to be voted in after being investigated, because they send 3 guys, they investigate you, the type of person that you are. If you're married, they actually sit down with the spouse as well to let her know the commitment that you're going to be taking, almost like a biker's club, right? Like you take this weird,
because they have like bylaws and dues and all those things, right? A lot like a union hall or a biker club, as you said, where, it would be like in a biker club, you would be sitting down for church. Yeah. And you would be having your meeting and everything like that.
Exactly.
Is that how you see it?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I would see it. Yeah, there is dues, and they change throughout the years. And that's one of the lodge duties that gets talked about in the lodge meetings is what are going to be the upcoming dues for the year, because it changes. Because a lot of these buildings aren't owned by the lodge; the lodge rents the building. Like for instance, the lodge that I was at the Scottish Rite building. So it was actually the Scottish Rite who owned it and then charged rent to all the other lodges of the blue crafts that wanted to use the building. And then they had to figure out their logistics of who's going to be on what night of the month and all that stuff. So that's what a lot of the lodge business is just the ritualistic side of things. All the other nefarious, wanting to take over the world, that stuff happens in, private book rooms, over a glass of brandy and a cigar, right? Mm-hmm. That's when all that stuff happens. So when people are like, oh, it's just a conspiracy, I'm going to just mention some notable past Masons, all right? George Washington, both Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Andrew Jackson, Ben Franklin, Houdini, Churchill, John Wayne, Oscar Wilde, Mark Twain, just to name a few.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay. And that's just the U.S. That doesn't even account for the rest of the world. Right. So, I mean, to say that they've infiltrated everything is a pretty accurate description of that. Right. So,
I mean, if you're gonna write history, right, your way, if you're gonna completely change history, you have to have every basis covered, because 100%. You have to have an Oscar Wilde, you have to have a Mark Twain, you have to have all these people that are painting and writing, because they have to paint and write what you want them to paint and write.
Exactly.
And once people back up that way, and they see that there's this whole lie that has to be told, you need the creative people to tell that lie.
Yeah.
So that's 100%. Awesome that you bring that up, because
and to build it. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's why they say that one of the phrases that Masons have is to meet on the level and part on the square, which is let's meet on level terms, and we're going to part on the square deal between the two of us. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you'll see Masons come from all walks of life. Like politics, the knuckle draggers like me, who are just machinists that build things, mechanics, other professionals, finance, lawyers, like judges, celebrities, right? They've infiltrated everything. How do you have the most influence? By infiltrating everything. So they infiltrate every single sector in the world in some way or fashion. Like, I've heard stories of, like, there's a certain thing called the sign of distress, which in the Master Mason's obligation, you actually, one of the oaths you take is to never use the sign of distress unless it's absolutely necessary, last resort, you're in some sort of danger or in some sort of situation that you need help, and you can throw up a sign of distress. And I've heard stories where guys have had issues, getting on a plane or the flight was canceled and had to get somewhere, but they throw it up in an airport, and within 5 minutes, they've got somebody there.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, it's weird. And so I told the story on the Silver Pill, but I'm going to tell it to your fans as well. So in the Stonecutters, they taught episode of The Simpsons, they give him like the emblem and everything for his car and all that stuff. I didn't get an emblem personally. I had to go buy my own from a Masonic store. I put that on my car.
That's rough.
Right? Well, they did. I've got some things I'm going to show you that I did get from Masons personally, but there's certain things like that. Like, if you want it, you for your car, you could get it yourself. It was like $10.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, right? And then it goes back to the lodges and stuff, that money, because this is like a Masonic store. So
Sure.
but I had that emblem on the back of my car, and I actually got pulled over. I was going a couple kilometers an hour faster than I should have been going. And I got pulled over, and when the cop was walking up, he noticed the emblem on the back of my car. And he had to have been a Mason because he knew all the right things to say. He came right up to the window, and I had my ring on, the hand, actually, here's the ring, just so you guys can see it.
Oh, wow. So
got that ring. I had that ring on, with the hand hanging out the window, and the guy comes up and he's just like, "Hey, brother, I see you're a traveling man." So in the oaths, or during your, it's not really necessarily in the oath, but it's during the actual ceremony going through the rituals. One of the questions they ask you is like, "Where are you traveling?" And you say, "I'm traveling from the east to the west, or the west to east to the west." Yeah, sun rises in the east. Wow. Yeah. Sorry, been a long day. East to the west, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the phrases. Like, I hear you're a traveling man. It's like, yes, I'm traveling from the east to the west in search of light. And so then they ask you, and then the next question is like, "What's your mother's name?" And some people use grandmother. I still, to this day, don't understand why they say grandmother. It's mother. At least that's what I was always taught. What's your mother's name? And then you would give whatever your lodge. The mother refers to your lodge, so whatever lodge you came up in. So the lodge name, and then the number, because every lodge has a number to it as well, refers to the age. So it'd be like, in my case, it was Temple 324. So it's like my mother's name is Temple, and she's 324. And so I give him that information. He's just like, "Okay, well, you're speeding. Slow down a little bit. Have a good day," and walk back to his cruiser. That was it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where he could have easily, it's end of the month, probably, didn't have his quota met. Could have easily given me a ticket and didn't. So it's little things like that you hear about, and that's kind of where the brotherhood aspect of it comes in.
Sure.
And so I like that kind of stuff. So you get a lot of that in it as well. And so
you find that there's this perks program, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you join Costco, you're part of their perks program. If you join any motorcycle club, you're part of their perks program. It's nothing different than what they're doing to us all the time with all these perk programs, but their perks program puts them above the law.
Yeah,
and that's the dangerous part, right? Where they just say, "Okay, go about your business," type thing. What would they do if it was a murder? Would he have done the same thing? We don't know. Who knows? How deep does the brotherhood go with certain people versus other people? Because some people might just be at entry level, like you were talking about, where you're just like, you're some guys that are having some beers and talking about trade, and then there's the others that are like, "This is my life. This is what I do. And I'm committed to every part of it," because they're a little bit higher than those guys. You see the cemeteries with all of the Mason people everywhere. You see the lodges everywhere. We're not really talking about those people. Those people, we don't have to run around and be like burning down Masonic lodges and flipping over Masonic lodge sticker cars, and like, we don't have to be like the Antifa. We don't have to do any of that stuff. We have to arm ourselves with knowledge, which is what we're doing here in this podcast today with Brady. And then we have to say, okay, how do we get out of this predicament that we're in now? And so I just wanted to make that point as we're going along. It is in everything, but it's not all of those guys. You have to get to a certain level, and we want to be very clear to say that. When us conspiracy theorists get a bad name because people don't listen long enough to hear all of the things that we have to say. They hear the first thing that comes out of my mouth, flat earth, and they're just like, "This dude's an idiot." And you're just like, "Okay, moving on." And so when we're talking about Masons, there's not a blanket statement of all Masons, and Brady's doing a really good job of showing us that. And so with that, Brady, I'll let you continue with what you got next.
Yeah, no, that was really well said, actually. And that's one of the messages that I try to convey, like, even myself, right? Like, I didn't, for me, it was more of just the boys club. I was personal finance. I wanted more customers, right? Like we had guys there that owned a car dealership. Most of the guys had cars from this guy, right? One of the guys was a plumber. Anytime you needed something done at your house, he was the guy to call, you know. They had another guy that was in personal finance, but he was retired, so he was more just an advisor role, not professional at that point. He's part of the reason I left, actually, because him and I kept butting heads. Because he just happened to also be the treasurer for the lodge and was just doing a terrible job with the lodge's investments. Like, I had proof to show that what I was doing with my clients' investments were far superior to what this guy was doing, which just caused a lot of drama. So that was part of the reason I got out. And then I just kind of got bored of it because I still at that point was very, like, you have to believe in a supreme being. So the fact that I was, baptized and confirmed and all that stuff allowed me to get in, but at that time I still didn't really believe in God. Like, I mean, I've always believed in a higher power. That's never been, an issue. I just didn't believe in the biblical God in a sense, or what was taught in church and school.
Sure.
I've always believed. One thing I can say too is I've always believed in the darkness, because for me it's like I looked into the darkness for so long that now it stares back, right? So, which is scary. Like I've dealt with shadow people. I've dealt with I don't know if it was like time slips or some sort of ghost in a forest that I was camping in. Buddy had a bayonet in his chest. Right, so like I was camping in an area that was very a lot of battles of the War of 1812 between Canada and the U.S. had happened there. So it was just a lot of weird things. A coyote that, giggled and winked at me like, a whale shark, like a huge.
Hold on. How much peyote were you
there
guys
any
smoking
mushrooms
on this?
involved?
No. There was no drugs or anything. Because at that point,
magic dragon.
So at that point, I was actually sober to stone cold sober. Like I'd quit a lot of basically everything at that point, except for smoking cigarettes, right? And so I woke up because I heard coyotes. Like I know what a coyote sounds like, especially when they're yipping and chasing their food. And I knew that there was coyotes in the area. I'd seen them there before, but this one was different. It was massive because it had to have been on four legs. It had to have been at least 3.5 feet off the ground, 4 feet off the ground, top to back, because it walked under my hammock that I sleep in, and its back was rubbing into mine. And I'm not that close to the ground on my hammock. Like I'm pretty off the ground because I know there's things like that in the forest, right? So I try to stay a little bit higher up. And so it was just, I felt it, and as it was going under, it sounded like a little girl was giggling, like playing. And so I was like, what the heck? And I roll over and I look out the hammock, and there's this coyote just turns back, winks, and I'm like, do one of these, rub my face. I'm like, because I'm waking up and I'm like, what? And then it's just gone, poof, gone. No, I heard it, I felt it, I saw it, I rubbed my eyes, a second later, and it's just vanished. And then you didn't hear it leave. So it's kind of like, one of those things. So it's after I got into Freemasonry. So I did I was investigated in the fall of 2012. I was initiated into the first degree in March of 2013. So between that time and that time, it took a little bit of time. And
what do you mean by investigated? Is there a process?
Yes. So,
are there things where that you can't be a Mason because of certain things?
Yeah, you can't be a slave, which people laugh about. Oh, there's no slave. Yeah, there's actually slavery is more prominent nowadays than it was before.
Yeah.
So can't be a slave. You got to be freeborn. You have to be 21 years or older. You have to believe in a supreme being, regardless of the name that you give your God. You just have to be some sort of. I think it's got to be some sort of like Abrahamic religion or Muslim even. I don't think you can be a Satanist, although as you go further down the road, that's a little bit more questionable that I had. So so they basically, what they do is they have a saying to be one, ask one. So you can ask a Mason they don't generally go out and recruit, although there was a time where they started to do that because their numbers were really starting to dwindle. Like even my lodge at one point, I was the youngest guy by like 15 years.
Yeah.
So, there wasn't anybody in their 20s in the lodge anymore. So they were trying to actively recruit people. But you can literally just go on their website of whatever, state, province, country, whatever you're living in, go to their Grand Lodge website, and they actually have an application. And you just fill out the application.
Oh, okay.
Then they'll contact you and ask you some questions and, figure out what lodge you'd like to go into based on your geographical area. Okay. And then they'll get in touch with that lodge. Then that lodge gets in touch with you. So this process takes a few weeks, right, of playing the telephone game.
Yeah.
And so they get in touch with you. The lodge gets in touch with you, and they'll set up a time to investigate you. So what they do is they come out. They send 3 people. They come out. They sit down with you. They sit down with your spouse. If you're married, in my case, I wasn't married at the time. I was single, so it was just me. And they just talk to you, ask you, what it is that you're looking to get out of it, what they're expecting from you, kind of give you the rundown on what the commitment's going to be like. And and then they take that back to the lodge. And basically, they also, I'm sure, go through other, channels of background checks and, social media checks and stuff like that nowadays, I'm sure, just to kind of gauge the type of person you are. Because they do, like their sayings are like, making good men better is one of their little phrases that they use. And Knights of Columbus actually use that too, I'm pretty sure. So, but so that would
be a good goal.
That would be the good goal. And that's where it all gets really twisted, because on the surface, it looks great. But when you're taking the oaths and you actually dive into what the oaths say, it's just like, it's an oath against God, really. You use his name in the oath sometimes. Most times it's just like the great architect of the universe. And so they'll investigate you with a couple of guys. They go back to the lodge, and then they vote on you after the members have all signed off that, we approve this guy. They'll read that in the lodge, and then they take a vote on it. And they'll go around. They literally have a thing, black balls and white balls. One black ball, you're done. You're never coming into a lodge ever. And so, I got lucky. I had all white balls. And actually, one of the head officers in the lodge at the time I worked with. So it was just, and it was weird. It was a coincidence because I didn't even know he was part of that lodge when I applied. Oh, wow. And he just happened to be one of the guys that they sent out to do the inspection or the investigation. Sorry. Wow. And it's just like, what? Really? I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm a shoo-in, right? Like, and
they really are everywhere.
They're everywhere, right? And he was a service advisor service advisor for the dealership that I worked at. So just to show you everything. He's one of the higher officers in the lodge at the time, because they actually rotate every year. You move up in the chairs, and then you become what they call a past master after you were the head worshipful master. They give you the past master's title. So so they investigate you. And then if all goes well, they initiate you in. And the initiation itself is just, it's weird because they hoodwink you or blindfold you. You've got a tow rope around your neck because they're literally just guiding you in. You're in these weird pajamas, so it's, I think it was like left breast wide open, arm out, hoodwinked, cable, rope tow around the neck, left pant leg rolled up, barefoot. And it's just, it's all symbolic in nature. And so they bring you in the door, and they have like some lodges. So it's supposed to be, depending on the degree that you're entering the lodge at, it's supposed to be like the compass or the square that they actually put to your chest. Some lodges use a sword for whatever reason. Like my lodge used a sword at the time. At least that's what I remember anyway. I know they used the square and the compass on later degrees, but coming out of the lodge the first time, there was a sword. So they have a guard out front of the door called the Tyler. He's the one that lets you into the lodge. And then they have the wardens, and junior wardens, and senior wardens, and senior deacons, and junior deacons. So I started to go through the chairs. I wanted to become an officer. So they bring you in. They make you swear this oath on the Bible, which is just hilarious, right? In a sense. So some of the symbols that people you'll see, there's something called the dew guard. And the dew guard is the position of your hands on the Bible when taking the oath for every degree. So every degree has a different hand placement symbol. Then they have the signs, which is another like hand signal kind of thing, which alludes to the penalty of these degrees. So I actually have all of the penalties here. I'm going to read them out to you one by one.
So excited.
So the first degree oath, in the oath, it's a really long. So before I do that, so this book here, this black book, is every ritual. It's a pretty thick book, but
wow,
it's even more surprising that it's this thick because everything is in acronyms and dots and dashes. So like if the average person,
wow,
you have no idea what's SD, what's JW, what's FC, like what's all that. Nobody. How do you know, right? Yeah. So the fact that it's this thick means it's an acronym, right? So in this book, they don't even have the oath in this. The oath was literally the biggest thing that was given by word and having to memorize it that way. Obviously, in this day and age, there's cheat notes. I have a website that I'll give to you guys at the end of the show. It is a gold mine for literature and everything you can think of. So you guys will. You could spend an eternity on this website. There's literally thousands and thousands of books on this website.
Maybe we shouldn't give it to Rick.
You'll
see him again.
You'll never see your husband again. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I haven't stopped bouncing since you said that.
Yeah, it's a great website. It was actually given to me by a Mason, and so a lot of the whole ritual is on there. The language is a bit different nowadays because this was written a while back, but the gist of it's on there. Or it's all on there, and you'll get the gist of it when you kind of just comb through. But so for the penalty for the very first degree, during your oath, you say, binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my throat cut across, my tongue torn out by its roots, and my body buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours, should I ever knowingly violate this my entered-apprenticed obligation. That's the penalty for the first. The second degree.
A bit harsh.
Right? Right? It gets worse as you goes on.
Oh, boy.
The second, of mine, whatever, binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my breast torn open, my heart plucked out and placed on the highest pinnacle of the temple, there to be devoured by the vultures of the air. Should I ever knowingly violate the fellowcraft obligation. Then, the third degree, under no less penalty than that of having my body severed in two, my bowels taken from thence and burned to ashes, the ashes scattered before the four winds of heaven, that no more remembrance might be had of so vile and wicked a wretch as I would be, should I ever knowingly violate this, my masturbation's obligation.
Wow.
Right, so
it seems like a Saw movie. I think I saw this in one of the Saw movies.
So there was a time back in, I think it was the 1800s, if I remember correctly. I had it here. I can't remember. 1826. So in 1826, there was actually a guy from New York who started letting out secrets. I don't know all the details of it, but he let out all these Freemason secrets. He disappeared.
Wow.
Nobody knows what happened to him. And so that's kind of where a lot of the conspiracy theories about like you disappearing people that give the secrets out. A lot of that kind of stemmed from that moment in 1826. So now I talked about the dew guard, which is the position of the hands, right? So there's like the Freemasons, like the first one's like this, the second one's like this, and then the third one's like this, hands up kind of thing. Then there's the sign, which is the penalty. So there's the first one's like this because you're going to have your throat cut across. Second one's like cut across the stomach, and so there's signs like that you give in lodge. It's almost like the sit, stand, kneel thing in the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It's a similar idea, like you're giving the signs and that kind of thing. And then they have the grips, which is the different handshakes. There's 2 different handshakes per degree. and then they have passwords that go with it. So you'll see a lot of politicians, you'll see a lot of musicians and stuff like that when they're up on stage, whatever, then shaking hands. It's a lot of it's the placement of the thumb and where they're placing the thumb on the hands. A lot of them do that really weak, girly looking type handshake with the thumb on the knuckles. That 9 times out of 10 is actually the Masonic handshake, depending on where the knuckle is. And you can always tell if you're shaking somebody's hand like that, and there's certain pressure in certain areas that you put the pressure in the handshake. Wow. That tells you that this person's a Mason. So if somebody ever did that to you, you didn't know they were a Mason, you could expect that might be the case. And then the passwords. So they have there's a pass grip for the first degree, and the password's Boaz, which was actually one of the pillars in King Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
And then there's called the pass grip. So there's the pass grip going from the first degree to the second degree. And the password for that is Shibboleth. And then there's called the real grip of the fellow craft Mason. And the password for that is Jacob, which I believe was the second pillar. Yeah, was the second pillar at the King Solomon's temple. And then there's the pass grip going from the second to the third. And the password for that is Tubal Cain, which anybody that knows anything about scripture knows about Tubal Cain. And then the real grip of the Master Mason, which is, you'll rarely ever see this in public because it's so obvious. It's almost like the medieval handshake where you're like that. And just, again, the placement, it's the placement of the fingers and the thumb and how you do it. And then the password for that is Maha Bone. And then there's different, then you do with the grip, with the Master Mason's grip, you do something called the 5 points of fellowship, which is almost like a footloose kind of moment. And so it's a weird, it's a placement of your feet. It's a little weird. Yeah. It's the weirdest thing when you see it for the first time. But
like
then you
crypt walk.
Almost. That's a really good way of describing it, actually.
I just like to bring things together for people.
Yeah,
what is Snoop Dogg doing?
Exactly. It's a weird, because you do the heels, like it's the heel and the foot turning and all that stuff, and then you're foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, cheek to cheek, and then you're saying Maha Bone. Yeah. So you're doing this grip, you're doing this weird walk, you do foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, cheek to cheek, whispering Maha Bone to each other. And so you'll rarely see that one in public because that one is, very obvious. Like, it'd almost be like, Sleepy Joe there up on stage.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. They'd be like, are you having a seizure?
Right? Like, what's going on?
Medic.
Yeah, medic. So
what does the symbol mean when you fall down the stairs?
Oh, stop it.
Who fell down the stairs? Oh, Sleepy Joe, yeah. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
All right, I'm done. Sorry.
So some of the things that they tote, as the Masons, they tote faith, hope, charity, brotherly love, relief, truth, morality, brotherly love. Those are like different virtues that they talk on, right? And so they teach through different things, like different tools and stuff that stonemasons use. They use that in a metaphorical way, right? Like it's, like I was saying earlier, like beat on the level, part on the square, stuff like that, right? It's all the morality of it. It's when you start to get into the other things that it gets weird. Like I've read, so I was going to start getting into the Scottish Rite. I was starting the process of getting into that when I decided I had enough and just ended up leaving. Yeah. So I didn't get to go into the really dark side of the things, which was probably a blessing in disguise because, I have enough darkness following me. So, but yeah, you definitely hear stories and you definitely know some of the people that are kind of in the know of that. Like I had a few guys in my lodge that were, 32nd, 33rd degrees. So you kind of, befriend them and you hear stories, and like I was saying, like the whole stonecutters thing, like and they infiltrate everything. Like there's a saying, travel the world on a penny, right? So like if you're well enough established in masonry, you can literally just travel anywhere for free. Like people just take you in. Like this guy that it was in my lodge, did a lot of missionary work down in Peru. And this is where it gets, confusing, because it's like you hear all this satanic stuff, but then here's this guy literally giving up his time, going down to Peru and doing missionary work, doing Jesus's work. Yeah. So it's like, it's you have both sides of the coin in Masonry. But as an organization as a whole, and like I said, the rituals and the oaths, it's not good. It's disguised as light, but it's not. So travel the world on penny. You can do. This guy goes down to Peru, goes to a lodge, says, hey, does there's an investigation that they'll do different. You can even get due cards from the lodge saying that your dues are up and paid, so that you are an active member. And so you carry that around with you. So if you ever go to another lodge, it's one of the easiest ways to prove yourself is literally just giving your dues card. So here it's almost like a driver's license in a sense for Masons, right? Yeah. So he's literally within a couple hours, he's got a place to stay for a month, right? Like just one of the guys brings him in, stays with their family. It's and that could just be Peru and how nice those people can be, but I've heard stories in other places in the world, so it's like that.
To me, my brain goes to like, this would be a good life to live, right? If you were connected with people in your community and you didn't have to, like, money almost doesn't matter, because you can go from house to house. And when you look back at the disciples and everything that they were doing, that was kind of like the book of Acts, how they were all just sharing everything and they were doing everything. So I could see how somebody that is a Christian and has these standards and these beliefs, how they could fall into this and do well for a while, because it's all about community. It's all about connecting. And it's almost like they're pulling you out of, and I don't know how far you've gone into admiralty law versus common law. It's almost like when you're a Freemason, you're pulled out of admiralty law and you're given common law, which is more of do no harm to anybody else around you. Just live under God's law. Basically, they're allowing you to live free and to do whatever you want. And you're above the law, and you can go here and you can go there. You can live that way if you choose to join us. So it's almost like you're giving your sovereignty over to them, and then they give you your freedom.
Yeah. And I mean, with the whole above the law thing too, there is obviously levels and degrees to that, right? Like
sure.
The further down you are in the bottom of the pit, like they're not going to come to your rescue. It's as you start to establish yourself within the organization and work your way through, that's when that kind of becomes more prevalent. So and there's a lot of things that they do. It's again two sides of the coin here. They do a lot of good things, or things that are disguised as good. But in my opinion, in my tinfoil hat vibrates whenever I think about it, there's some nefarious things that go on behind the scenes with some of these things I'm going to tell you about right now. So there's different, I guess, organizations that they run. So here in Canada, anyway, especially, they have something called the Shriners Children's Hospital. There are.
We have that too.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if there were any in there, because it was actually established in Montreal in 1925. There's 22 locations in Canada, and so I'm just kind of like, all right, they run a children's hospital. Children trafficking is something that is now starting to finally come to the light, and it makes me wonder how much goes on through there. Then they also have the Scottish Rite. They run all the blood donor clinics here, at least in my area.
Interesting.
Taking people's blood for hospitals and things like that. Yet I'm always getting called, or used to. It's because they changed their regulations about a decade ago. Now they won't take my blood because I had skin cancer when I was a toddler. Like, you guys used to call me all the time for my blood because I'm an O blood type, so universal donor. they're always
Interesting
like,
shift in thought process once you didn't want to be one of them anymore.
right? And so they run in the blood donor clinics, yet there's always a shortage for blood. And I'm like, wow, what are you doing with all the blood that you guys are getting?
Yeah.
Are you doing some blood rituals,
Mm-hmm.
with these people's blood? And then you have something called the Masonic Chip Program. And this one is the real weird one for me out of all the programs. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the Masonic Chip Program, but what it is a program designed to help police identify children if they go missing.
Oh, yes, I have heard of this.
So they take DNA, hair samples, fingerprints, dental records, all this stuff of your child, so that if your child ever went missing, they have a full profile of, to help them already get jump started on finding your child. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all these people that are doing this are literally giving all this information about your child to who knows who.
So the people that are taking them.
Right? Like, and that's, so again, the tinfoil hat. That's where I started to kind of piece these things together. Now, I don't have any proof, like tangible proof of that, but just from some of the things stories that I've heard and things that I've seen and my research, it's not that far stretched for me to believe that. Like, it's, especially with everything that's coming out.
Well, when you get to a certain level, I mean, we're talking about way up levels that nobody gets to know about, and the things that they have to do up there, we can't find on the internet most of the time. There's only so much that they're going to allow to be out there because of what we said before, which is that they're in everything and they're controlling the whole narrative. So if they're controlling the narrative, we're not going to get to know what they're doing at that level. They'll appease us from here to there, but that's all you get, because that's where they're they're really above the law at that level. That's when you're talking world leaders and politicians and all of these different people. They're all connected. And so if you have that type of connection where you can fly all over the world on a penny, that the amount that you can get away with is pretty high when it comes to taking a child and trafficking a child.
Yeah.
So if you start to come back and you think about all of the things that we've talked about in all of our 52 episodes up until this point, we've been building a picture for everybody to be able to think how we think. Once you see the symbols, I mean, Brady could probably watch TV and see people doing those handshakes all the time.
I see it all the time.
Right? And so that's how they see the world. When you see the world differently than the sheep, if you will, then you can control the sheep, because you're not talking to them. You're talking to somebody else. You're talking to the people that are paying attention to your crypt walks and your blood signs and all of this stuff. And those are the things. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Those are the things that pique people's attention, because they're paying attention to that thing. And I think we're waking up to the fact that there is that other level now, and we need to be paying attention to what those guys are doing, because those guys are controlling everything. And they're doing it from Camp David, and they're doing it from all of these different places that we, like the basement of the White House, the Oval Office. Like this is real stuff, guys. You need to pay attention.
Sorry to interrupt. I wouldn't even go that far. I wouldn't even go that far. I would go, their cabins in the woods. Yeah. And they're fly fishing. And that's what I was saying. Like, a lot of the nefarious stuff happens, not in these like official closed door meetings. It's literally when it's when they're out for a coffee, having a cigar with each other, and they're just shooting the breeze and shooting ideas at each other. That's where it all starts. That's where the nefarious stuff really starts. And then they branch out to that through their official channels, and they are able to do, different things and influence stuff. And so a lot of these things, like I was saying, with like the blood donor clinic, the hospitals, and the Masonic Chip Program, it's all disguised and dressed up nicely to look good. Because I heard a thing recently about Alfred Nobel, right? And so the reason why he created the Nobel Prize and put the money towards creating that award was because he didn't want his legacy to be of the guy who founded dynamite and explosives. Because for the longest time, that's all anybody thought about was put his name. You think of dynamite, it's Alfred Nobel. He didn't want his legacy to be tainted in that sense. So he goes and does, the Nobel Peace Prize, which, in my opinion, a lot of it's a sham anyway.
Sure.
But
considering some of the people that have them,
exactly right.
Yeah.
So like the Masons, they do the same thing, right? They hide in plain sight with their stuff. They dress it up to make it look good, to protect the legacy, but deep down, it's really just heinous crap. Like it's I'm glad that I got out of it, to be honest.
You're telling me, but I'm glad you're out of it. That's crazy. I mean,
so what was that process like for you? Did you sit down with them and say, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore," and they were like, "Okay, bye," or was it like? Because I've heard like you can't leave, or you can't. You can.
Yeah, we should clear this up.
I went the long route
Mm.
of doing it. I stopped showing up, and I blocked and deleted all their phone numbers, changed my phone number, moved from where I was at, and didn't update my address or anything with them, and just kind of fell off, disappeared, got anybody off my social media that had any ties to it, put my social media on complete private, changed my name on social media so that, I just wouldn't even. And the funny thing is a lot of that was actually happening at the same time that I had a woman who was mentally unstable that I kept having to change my information because of. So it was weird that it was just the timing of that. It worked out kind of good, right? So I was like, yeah.
She might have been your handler.
Oh, well, she was something. She oh my goodness. She, I don't like to speak ill of people, but she definitely had some issues. And, to the point, like I every time I talk about it, it's like, it just brings up weird memories, but like incantations and spell work, always making me sick so that I would be reliant on, her. It's like, got this nasty throat infection when I just drove 5 hours up north to go on a camping trip that she didn't want me to go on.
Yeah.
So it's just all this weird stuff with that. And then just, just other things that had happened with her and other things that were happening around that time too. Like a lot of the ghosts in the forest, the coyote in the forest was within months around that time frame as well. So it's, a lot of weird stuff. So, but yeah, that's it's for me to get out. That was as simple as it was. They had contacted me. One of the guys that I knew before I'd gotten in, he had contacted me, and basically, was trying to be like, "Hey, are you coming back?" And I just ignored it. I didn't reply to anything. And now I'm just in that position where I'm so far removed in the sense like I haven't been there since 2016. If I was even still so. Now, to be fair, they've never officially sent me any documentation saying that I'm blackballed. I know that at one point there was guys that hadn't shown up for 15 years that they were trying to bring back. Because again, like their numbers were dwindling. So they were trying to bring guys back. Now, these guys also weren't going on podcasts and, divulging secrets and anything like that. So I would assume.
Has there been any backlash after you were on Silver Pilled?
There hasn't been backlash in the sense of anybody or anything happening. I mean, nothing crazier than all the weird supernatural paranormal crap that I already deal with.
Yeah.
I still always see shadows. Although I don't know if you saw my Instagram the other night. So I was listening to the Silver Pilled's new episode from this week about the deliverance with Sean. And I'm at work, and as I'm listening to this, my machine likes to be really weird and funky sometimes and just kind of go all messed up. And it loves, for some reason, whenever I'm listening to something about God or something about deliverance or something about fighting like spiritual warfare, and how real that is. My goodness. My machine tends to pump out. So the suction on it goes generally between, if it's good suction, 500 to 700 psi. My machine generally typically goes between 640. But whenever I'm listening to one of those things, it always just drops the specific 666.
Oh my!
Every time. And so I was actually I sent Harrison from the Silver Pole. I sent him a picture I was like, dude, I'm listening to your podcast on deliverance now. Look what my machine is doing right now. And I snapped a picture of 666. I ended up posting it on Instagram. Right? Yeah. And he's just like, dude, he's like, this is like the second time that you've sent me a picture of your machine doing this. And I was like, I don't know what it is, man, but this machine, it's, so that
spiritual warfare stuff is crazy. There's been actually almost every time we put out a really, controversial or weird episode, like me and Rick are fighting. We are like full on fighting like almost every time. It's almost like, the devil's like, you're doing something good, so we got to just knock you down a peg. So then it's really weird.
Yeah. That's a story of my life. Whenever I've had any change, anything good, that I'm advancing for in my life, it's just like I'll have a little bit of peace and quiet, and then all of a sudden it just kind of ramps up again. And I mean, like I said, I was really into the New Age and spellcasting and that stuff up until about, I'd say 7 or 8 months ago now. It wasn't until then, like I just one day woke up in the spring, like early spring, like end of February or March. Woke up one day and was just like, I need to pray. I need to pray. I was like, why do I feel like I need to pray for the first time in 2 decades? Like, this is just weird, And so I just, I didn't really know what to do. So I just, did Our Father a couple times and then went about my day. And then it was the next morning, woke up, same thing. Like, I need to pray. And now I've actually started praying the armor of God, Ephesians 6. Started praying that now. But yeah, spiritual warfare just ramped up real bad when I got into the Masons. And then, so there hasn't been any backlash, but there has been more spiritual warfare I've found since the episode aired. And one creepy thing too was literally within a few hours of the episode going live on Spotify and stuff, I started getting random phone calls from weird numbers all over the U.S. And like Texas, Los Angeles. I even got one from Oregon. So and I'm like, my number's not public, so I don't know, who's calling me. And you answer, and it's just static. It's just it's a static line. Nobody wants to respond. And I have you should see the list of numbers I have blocked on my phone right now, just from all these weird.
Well, it's crazy when you first start to realize that this spiritual warfare is real. When you wake up, when you pull your head back from your phone and you turn off the TV and you turn off all the music that they're distracting you with, all of the distractions of the world. If you're a Christian and you're not turning all that stuff off and quieting your mind for at least an hour a day, then you're not hearing from the Lord. I can guarantee you that, because there's so much static going on in your head. And I always talk to people and they're like, I don't hear from God. I never hear from God. And it's like, well, did you do all of this? Did you shut everything off? Because you have to quiet your mind. You have to actually, what I started doing was listening to the Psalms. And when you listen to the Psalms, you hear things that you didn't hear before when you were just reading them. And then you start to listen to them as if it's you. If you can read them, this is sacrilegious. You can't do that. You're not David. I know. I already heard you, so you don't have to type it. So David was in a very hard spot, right? Where he was about to be killed by Saul. He's running from Saul. He's doing all these different things. We all know, hopefully, if we're Christians, we know the Bible. And so as he's running away and he's doing all that stuff, he's writing these Psalms because he's got an enemy chasing after him. And he's like, God, you told me to be here. This is what you wanted. And this guy's chasing me around everywhere. He's trying to kill me. But then he gets to a resolve where he's just like, he realizes that you're the God of everything. You are the Almighty. And there is nothing, nobody, anything, little g God, Democrat, Republican, Snoop Dogg, none of these people can hurt you. They're all underneath God. And the big G, Almighty God, and I know I'm preaching, it's whatever. He's telling everybody right now.
Best to just let him finish.
He's telling everybody right now, we need to pay attention, because since 9/11, There's a book called The Harbingers. If you guys haven't read it, you probably should. It's very interesting. Shout out. So if you go through this, you find that 9/11 was a big time in America's history. It was the first time America was hit hard from the outside in, and it was a removal of God's hedge of protection for a time. And we need to realize that we are in a time where we have a decision to make, all of us. Are we going to allow these Masons and these Satanists and all these people to continue to do what they're doing? Or are we going to stand up and say, Almighty God is what I believe in. Almighty God is my one and only. And only him I will follow. Like the disciples said, they're standing up in front of the kings and they're like, I don't follow you. I don't follow man. I follow the Almighty, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can bring your tanks. You can bring your guns. You can bring whatever you want. You can kill me. I'm still going to follow the Almighty. There's nothing you could do. And that resolve, you can read it through the songs. That resolve that he's come to, where he's like, it is what it is. Deal with it. And that's where we all need to be, I think. Personally, if we're Christians in this time and we're seeing all that's going on outside, we need to say, this is my resolve. And even read those Psalms over yourself as if it's your situation, because it's powerful. If it says enemy or the evil one or anything like that, if it helps you, put in Obama, put in Hillary Clinton, if that helps you. If it helps you to see an evil person in your mind and you want to see what the depths and the breadths of evil are, picture her or him when you're listening to the Psalms and say, save me from them.
Yeah.
Save me from the Masons. Save me from all of these people that are doing these things to me, because I am standing on you. I'm asking you to rescue us, because we can't do it. We can't.
Yeah, or, I mean, for any Canadian fans of yours, Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
I mean, to say that anybody who has German ties is a Nazi, is a false statement. But Chrystia Freeland's great-grandfather, I think it was, literally ran like some of the concentration camp stuff, right? And she actually wrote the book on how to, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's literally about tearing down the middle class and rising up of the oligarchs, the leader of Canada and his, the deputy prime minister or whatever she is, right? It's insane, And so I think for me, like the timing, I've never believed in coincidences. I've always believed that there's some plan or something going, behind the scenes at all times. And in this case, with like me awakening in a sense, coming back from the darkness that I lived for 2 decades, I noticed that a lot of people have kind of started to wake up. Friends of mine, people at work, even my girlfriend's father-in-law, even him, it's odd hearing him speak about God, because, never heard him talk to you about it until the last few months. So, and it's That's like awesome. Me. Yeah, and with me too. Like I live a very private life. Like I'm not out there. Like my Instagram has like 100 followers, right? So I'm not. I don't.
You might start blowing up now.
Maybe, right? Maybe. But so I live a very private life. So for me to even come onto any podcast and really discuss a lot of this stuff, it was never really my intention, but it's just kind of God just put that forth, right? Like it was just like that's what it needs to happen, because I think a lot of this needs to come out. And again, not every Freemason is bad. It's just the organization and the things that they do are just,
It's like that 9 truths and a lie that we've talked about in all of our episodes, where they give you mostly good stuff, but you got to remember that one lie that they're telling you.
Yeah, they sprinkle in a little bit of truth, and then the rest of it's just all BS. Right?
And it's look here, don't look over there. Yeah. It's all distraction. It's all.
And that's the same thing with all these forest fires and everything that have been going on.
Yes,
right? Like
big time.
Look over here. Don't look at what's going on. The economy. Don't worry about the fact that you can't buy. Like I don't know. I don't pay too much attention to the U.S. politics and things like that. But here in Canada, it's bad, man. Like the rental costs just for a house have just skyrocketed. Like 5 years ago,
same
you could rent a 3-bedroom townhouse 5 years ago for like $1,800,
Yeah.
a month. And now you're getting, especially in Toronto, a 600 square foot apartment for $3,200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then
gosh.
our taxes are through the roof, right? You pay like 30% income tax, then you've got sales tax, then you've got 3 carbon taxes, because taxing people really is going to help the environment. Like, it's absolutely absurd what's going on in this country. And it's all by design, because, the whole WEF, and you'll own nothing and be happy in class. Wow, you'll eat the bags, Trudeau is like Schwab was Trudeau's mentor. Right. So it's no surprise that our country's going the way that it's going. And so I really believe that exposing and the more people that start to have that conversation about some of the stuff that's going on, that's why that Sound of Freedom movie, I haven't been able to see it yet, but I've heard a lot about it. And I've seen different interviews with them. And I think like things like that is so important. And I think that podcasts like yours are so important. One of the things I love about yours and the Silver Pill Boys is the fact that you guys come from a Jesus stance, a Christian stance.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because
we wanted to make that very important.
Yeah, and for me, that was one of the things that I started looking for. I mean, I used to listen to podcasts all the time, Joe Rogan, obviously, and different fitness podcasts and stuff like that. And then once I kind of woke up, I was like, I need something different. And I started looking into, like, I literally typed in, Christian podcasts or Christian paranormal podcasts. And the Silver Pill was one of the first ones that came up. And then you guys, when you reached out, I've listened to almost your entire catalog now. So I work 13-hour shifts, right? So I got a lot of time, right? So I was keeping me entertained. But yeah,
well,
so
hopefully at least your machine was working really well that whole time.
No. One of you, I don't know which episode it was, but there was an episode that I was listening. It was one. I think it was one of your deliverance podcasts or something like that. One episodes. It tends to be always one of those podcasts. Yeah. So, but I did want to show you guys some interesting things. So I showed you the ring. So this is the pin that I got from the Grand Lodge of Canada when I became a Master Mason. So they gave you that one. This pin, this tie pin, was a sterling silver. It was given to me as a gift, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then when you become a Master Mason, so there's different aprons that people wear in the lodge. They give you a pair of white gloves as well for wearing the lodge. And then you have, so there's different aprons. Entered Apprentice, Fellow Craft, Second Degree. They have different aprons. And then this is the Third Degree Master Mason.
Oh, wow.
Apron. Yeah. And so there's different kinds. So the gold around the edges here represents that your lodge has been around for over 100 years. So when a lodge is 100 years or older, they get the gold around it. Before that, it's actually silver. And I didn't realize that because it's not one of the things that's normally talked about. But I questioned it when I went to a different lodge one night for a meeting. And I was like a buddy that I worked with at the time. He was a member of a different lodge as well. So I went to one of his meetings because he was just becoming an officer, going through the chairs. And so that was one of the things that he was doing at that meeting. So I went to see what it was about. And it's like, why do you guys have different aprons? Why? What's with the silver?
I wondered that. Yeah.
Right. So it was explained to me. Yeah, like if your lodge is newer, under 100 years old, you get the silver, and if it's over 100 years, you get that. Now you've probably seen pictures of guys with like a dark royal blue apron.
Yeah.
The royal blue aprons are the Scottish Rite. So once you go into the Scottish Rite and go up further, that's what those aprons are. The red aprons that you see, that's the York Rite. And that's where the Knight Templar and everything is. And so I sent you guys the picture of it on Instagram, but I'll show you the actual. That is the lodge certificate.
The certificate. Okay.
Yeah. And so if you look closely at the very bottom there, so I can get that on camera, you'll see November AL 6014 AD 2014. And so basically what that means is that the 6000, so AL stands for Anno Luminous, which is the year of the light. And so the whole thing is about becoming enlightened and following following in Hiram Abiff's footsteps. This is where they go against God in their oaths and their ceremonies and their rituals. The following in the footsteps of Hiram Abiff is the only way to become enlightened. The only way to enlighten is through the master mason builder, Hiram Abiff. False. Jesus is the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so they won't even talk about it because the two things that and this is what, sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. So, like when I was saying the various stuff, the plotting doesn't happen in the lodge. Two of the things that are forbidden to be spoken of in lodge are actually religion and politics. You cannot speak about that in a lodge. You can speak about it later on in the night when you're downstairs, because lodges are always on the third floor or the second floor, even some of them. And then like their bars and whatever are down on some lodges in the U.S. I believe alcohol is actually banned. But here in Canada, we had a bar with $2 beers, so it was great. You rush through all your lodge business if you didn't really have much going on that night, no initiations or ceremonies or anything like that. You just do all your quick, regular ritual and then go downstairs and shoot the breeze. And again, that was where kind of that came from. So one of the other things too that you get, how blasphemous is that?
Jeez.
What?
Right? Holy Bible with the Masonic symbol on it. And then it's literally Holy Bible, Master Mason's edition. So
insane.
The very first chapter, see if I can pull it up. So the very first chapter is supposed to be Genesis. All those pages before it are the Master Mason's chapter.
Oh.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. And it's funny because in here they have all different obligations and different phrases and everything like that. And I remember when I was actually I was showing the Silverfield guys this Bible as well. And I literally opened the page, and the very first word that I saw on the page, let's see if I can find it now. I didn't open it to this time. The very first word was Illuminati. Now I can't find it, of course. Figures.
Wow.
But yeah, the very first page that I opened it to had the word Illuminati in it. And so it just it goes on about talks about King Solomon's temple, talks about all the different like the clothing that you would wear and banishment, being barefoot, burials, because they have their own burial as well.
Yeah, I think our great grandpa, he was buried with all of his Mason stuff.
Probably, yeah, and they probably did like a
Our
closed
grandpa,
door.
Yeah.
So
and our grandma was an Eastern Star and all of that. I mean, they were really into it.
They were big.
So you guys have some pretty good bloodline stuff going there.
Yeah, we need some deliverance.
I was going to say, have you had some deliverance? Because I guarantee
we haven't. We've talked about it, but
I would get it. I'm trying to look into it myself because my bloodline too, right? Like I've had Eastern Star members and members of my family that were Masons. Even my stepdad was a part of the Order of Demole, which is the male youth.
Oh yeah.
So is our dad.
There you go. Right. So they could have, you guys could be, having your generational curses. Yeah. Thank you. That was the frame that I was looking for. Yeah, like it's definitely, something that I would look into, because I know that for me, it's I mean, from everything I've read and what I've gathered when it comes to deliverance for a person who was a Mason themselves is a lot of work. Like it's, because again, the oaths that you take to the brotherhood and things like that, you're not really thinking about. You just open up so many doors. And that was one of the things I'd like to advise people too. Like if you're going to start looking into it too, be sure to protect yourself spiritually. The armor of God, again, Ephesians 6, because like I said, you stare into the darkness long enough, it starts to stare back, and not only stare back, but it reaches out. When it touches you, it could be some pretty scary crap. So I always recommend that.
You didn't get to talk
even before then. Like I always kind of did my own little New Age type ritual when I would have looked into anything, not realizing that all that was doing is just amplifying it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like trying to do like a protection ritual or protection spell, and meanwhile, all I'm doing is kicking the door down for them. You know, and just being like, "Come on in," like a lighthouse in fog,
join
right?
us.
Like, oh my gosh!
They don't tell you about any of this stuff when you're growing up, right? They tell you about the Ouija board. They're like, "Don't touch the Ouija board," but you're like, "Okay." If in my opinion, the Ouija board's like entry level. Like, if I'm going to be talking to people about be careful of this, I want to say be careful of the Masons, man, because like you just said, all of those oaths that you take, any of these lodges, any of these brotherhoods or sisterhoods, or all of these things that you're getting connected with, even a church that you decide to join because you want to find God. You know, ask questions the same way that you're asking questions about what's going on in your government, what's going on with COVID, what's going on with this. Ask those same questions about your own local church, your pastor, because, I mean, how many kids have been touched by Catholic priests and abducted from churches and all these things, you know?
Story about that, actually. That's where a lot of my disdain, even to this day, comes from with the Catholic Church. So the church that I went to growing up, the church that I was an altar server at, that priest was pled guilty, actually, about 5 or 6 years ago, to a past crime of touching a couple boys in the past. One of the teachers in the Catholic school that I went to, he pled guilty a couple years ago from molesting a whole crap ton of the girls in the school. Some that were older, some that were my age, some that were younger. And he's the only one that's been brought into the light on that one. I'm hoping that a couple of the other ones that were rumored, we kind of were like, yeah, it happened. I kind of hope that the girls from those ones come forward as well, bring that to the light. But I get it, you know, it's something that you don't want to relive, and you just kind of want to get past. And that was one of the, I think, the mercies that this teacher gave, is that he pled guilty so that the girls didn't have to go to trial and give, you know, public testimonies and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that was my biggest thing, is like, I know non-Christians that are more Christian than priests, you know, some priests.
Yep, totally.
And so that's why it's like I stopped with the whole religion side of things, and I just, you know, walk with Jesus. You don't have to, you know, basically be a part of a certain denomination, you know, to believe in Jesus and you know, open your heart to Him. You don't have to be a Roman Catholic, a Protestant, or Anglican, or anything like that. You don't have to be that, you know. But you know, you do need to have Jesus in your heart. Otherwise, you know, you're going to be going to some dark places. In your
well,
life,
in fact, those things are a bit of a distraction anyway. You know, they're a bit of a trap, if you will. They're trying to get you thinking about things that don't matter. Like, you know, when do I sit? When do I stand? That in and of itself is a distraction from you talking to God. You know, do I put the cracker in my mouth, or do I pull it off of a loaf of bread, or do I get it from a priest? Like, all of those things are a distraction from the fact that you're taking the body and the blood of Jesus Christ, not actually, but symbolically. And the way that you do that is by getting your heart right. Like, that's what Paul talks about. He's like, none of that stuff matters. This is what matters. And in fact, if your heart's not right, don't take it, because you're lumping coals on your head. You know, you're taking it without the right heart and the right mindset, because you're too worried about the bread and whether it's a cracker or, you know, it's like that stuff doesn't matter. And those are traps that have been developed over time to get you. I mean, if you've read the book Pagan Christianity, you can hear it. I think I've mentioned that book before, where you're learning that the paganism was put into the churches slowly, and over time, these guys play the long game. And if we haven't realized that by now, then we're not paying attention. We're still asleep. These guys play the very long game. And if you think that they haven't infiltrated your churches or your traditions or all of those different things, think again. Do more research then. And keep listening, because we're going to keep bringing it up. We're going to keep talking about all of this crazy stuff. And we're hoping that Brady will be able to have you on again. And we'd love to hear updates. Anytime. It would be awesome. Tell the audience where they can find you. I know you've got that one website, but I also want them to find you and give those likes and shares and subscribes and all those things to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I have now is Instagram. I don't even know what my handle is on Instagram. So I'll look it up for you. It's
No, you're good. We can link it in the
okay.
show notes.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
for anybody, it's B_Rich369. Not rich as in money, but this is part of my last name. So, but that's it for where I can be found now. For that website, because I do want to give you this juicy website. You know what? I'll say it on the air for your listeners as well. It's sacred, so SACRED dash, not slash, but dash texts, so TEXTS.com. And I promise you, the rabbit holes you can go down with the literature on that website, you will never see each other again. You'll be,
Yes.
you're going to want to have
like yelling at each other from other rooms.
You're going to want to be putting on diapers so you don't have to get up.
There you go.
Like those gamers used to do, right? So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that website. Check out that website. You'll see a lot of great stuff on there as well. A lot of new age stuff too, but like it's got everything on there. You'll see what I mean once you check it out. But yeah, so that's my Instagram handle. Anybody wants to shoot me a message, I am set on private, but shoot me a message telling me that you heard me on here, and definitely give you a follow. So
that's awesome. And we'd also like to talk about the new Fringday chat, the Fringday chat that I set up today on Telegram for anybody that wants to talk back and forth about anything that you're hearing in our episodes. You want to share information with each other. You just want to get together, talk about God, share scripture, whatever you want to do. We're trying to open up the opportunity for people that are like-minded, like we are, to be able to talk and to discuss and to feel safe and to feel like you can talk. And there, you might see from time to time some spam in there or something like that. Just report it and we'll get it out of there as fast as possible. But that's going to be in the show notes. You guys will be able to get on there and interact with each other. It'll be cool. Ask some questions. Maybe we'll get on and do some lives or something like that. We're trying to grow this podcast, as you guys begin to listen more and more. We're hearing you and we're seeing your what you want to hear. And so we're trying to provide that for you. We're trying to give you an opportunity to talk directly to us because that's who we are. We're just normal people. We're literally just talking through a computer. Like, it doesn't change anything. So, I mean, I'm not Joe Rogan, but it is what it is. We're all here with a purpose, and that purpose is to shine bright the name of Jesus Christ and to show everybody that the Almighty is the only thing that matters to us, and all other things be damned. So, that being said, we're going to wrap this episode unless you guys got anything else. Anybody?
Yeah, any questions? No, I guess.
You guys got any questions for him before we head?
Nope.
All right.
We'll save it for next time.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll have to do another one.
If Brady, I'm going to send you the link. If you guys want to jump on there, you can ask Brady some questions, and I'm sure Brady would be kind enough to answer some questions that you guys have.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to see clearer pictures of those things, maybe Brady can put those on there as well. So that
some pictures.
Yeah, what I can do is some of the other stuff too. I can take some pictures and I can send it to you guys.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We would appreciate it, man. We're trying to be interactive with everybody, and this is how we do that.
And thank you for being willing to talk about this stuff.
Well, hey, like I said, this stuff needs to get out, and anything I can do to help. So it's I'm happy to help.
If you guys could be
praying,
praying,
you guys have me on.
Dude, we don't care. Our God is money. You can say whatever you want. You can. What are you gonna do? You're gonna ban me? You're gonna cancel me? I don't care.
Yeah, good
do it.
Right?
Yeah, I'll just start another one. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm like a bad rash. Go ahead, keep fighting.
It won't go away.
They're like the 7-year plague, right? Never going away.
Yeah,
That's exactly it. You're gonna have to kill me. So with that, we love you all. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. We got behind the curtain with Brady here, and that was so great. We appreciate you. I just ask that those prayer warriors out there be praying for Brady, because as he goes on this mission to bring the darkness to the light, he's going to need the protection of God. And the only way that he can get that is by himself coming before the Lord and by all of us surrounding him as well. So please do that. Keep him in your prayers. We love you guys. And with that, we're out of here. We are That's So Fringy Podcast, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.